Brace yourself. It's happening in just 9.5 hours. Former CIA Director David Petraeus will take the oath and testify about Benghazi. But he'd better have some good answers because lawmakers were not happy with what they heard today, or at least not all of them. And the Benghazi hearings, well, some say that they got ugly.
What is clear is that this administration, including the president himself, has intentionally misinformed, read that, lied, to the American people in the aftermath of this tragedy.
But it's pretty clear that Ambassador Rice misled Congress and the American people about what happened. That really, the question I have is, was it intentional, or did she not know what was going on? And we still don't know what the facts are because we've had so many different scenarios rolled out by the administration.
Were these 4 Americans, could their lives have been saved if there was a rapid response? We had assets in the region. Why weren't those assets employed? Think about this for a moment. We went into Libya to protect Libyans in Benghazi. We couldn't go into Benghazi to protect Americans there?
If the acting CIA director is going to say we didn't ask for help during the Benghazi attack, what are the odds that Petraeus is going to say, you know what, I was wrong about that video. This thing was due to Al-Qaeda and it was a terror attack, and we knew that at the moment it was happening. What are the odds he's going to say that?
If Ambassador Rice had nothing to do with the Benghazi cover-up, then why did the administration use her as a mouthpiece to mislead the American people on 5 Sunday talk shows?
The logical question this raises is, why do you send out to tell the American people what happened about Benghazi, a person who has nothing to do with Benghazi?
This is not simply a cover-up of a third-rate burglary. We have 4 of our diplomatic personnel dead, and it is not a McCarthy-era tactic to demand accountability and demand that the American people are not misinformed about it to the point that they don't know what the threat is.
These unfair attacks on Ambassador Susan Rice are simply wrong. She had to rely on the intelligence that was provided. Ultimately, State Department personnel have to rely on the intelligence reports they're given. And Susan Rice's integrity, capacity, and record are beyond question.
Now, President Obama has the gall to float the name as possible Secretary of State, the name of the person who is the actual vehicle used to misinform the American people during this crisis.
And tonight, a new internal CIA investigation opened. Who is the target? It's former Director David Petraeus. Now, 1 week ago, General Petraeus resigned over the extramarital affair with Paula Broadwell. But today, the sex scandal, well, it got weirder. Tampa socialite Jill Kelly told a reporter that she had breakfast at the White House on September 28th. Now, this claim has not been verified. Former UN Ambassador John Bolton joins us. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Glad to be with you.
First, your overall thought today about what transpired on Capitol Hill in terms of there at least some report behind closed doors today.
Well, I think the most interesting testimony that's leaked out, and I do have faith the rest of it will leak out in due course, is that the Director of National Intelligence and the acting CIA director would not say where the talking points that Susan Rice used on those famous 5 Sunday shows came from. So the notion that somehow or another this was all supplied to her by the intelligence community, I think, is now in question. And the real issue is, did the White House write those talking points to suit their ideology, to suit their political imperatives? Where did all that come from? And that, I think, is going to be the focus of a lot of the inquiry with Director Petraeus tomorrow.
One of the things that's sort of curious to me, and I'm totally on the outside of this, but having tried cases, I know that some things you have to sort of keep secret. Some things on Capitol Hill have to be kept secret because it's classified. But I have sort of a view from the outside that things tend to get overclassified, that there's probably information today that we probably could have heard. I mean, how did the American people determine what is legitimately classified, left only to the sound judgment of members of Congress, and how much are we just not hearing and that, frankly, we have a right to hear?
Well, I think that the next step should be having these same hearings in public with whatever small amounts of stuff is really legitimately classifiable just kept out of the public domain. I'm not troubled myself by closed hearings at first, but I think inevitably we're going to need to have these hearings out in the open, because let's just talk about substance for a minute. There is no evidence, and never has been, that what happened in Benghazi was the result of a demonstration that got out of control. The people on the ground in Benghazi on September the 11th never believed it. You don't need intelligence for that. You just have to talk to U.S. government employees. So the disparity between the reality on the ground and the administration's story was stark from day one. And I think you can talk about that in public, and you can find out who in the administration was involved in crafting the cover story.
Well, there are a number of topics. I mean, I've outlined all the topics if I were the one doing the inquiry that I want to know. I want to know, first of all, what was the CIA doing there? I mean, what in the world is the CIA doing there, a rather large CIA contingency in Benghazi? I'd like to know that. I'd like to know about all the activity pre-9/11. We have the cable on August 16th that my colleague Catherine Herridge has seen. We know that there was the explosion back in June. I'd like to know, like, why that was all unanswered. Then we have the events of 9/11. You know, what happened that night. Then after 9/11, we have this sort of weird series of events. We have the UN ambassador being sent out. Why she was sent out, I don't know. She doesn't seem like the person to be sent out, and certainly she was the wrong person because she carried the party line, at least what I see about this business about the spontaneous protest as well as the video. Then you've got General Petraeus. He goes 9/14, and on September 14th, he tells the same story. You got the president going on every single entertainment, an exaggeration. We went on Letterman, he went on The View, talking about the video. That's weird. Then you've got the problem with General Petraeus and Broadwell, the girlfriend, and we don't know if that relationship somehow poisoned how he did his job. How did she get classified documents? Where did she get that? And whether or not, you know, when did the affair begin? And did it begin when he was in the military, and has he lied to us? So there are a lot of unanswered questions, and it's all being done, presumably, for the most part, so far behind closed doors. But it was just one day, right?
Right. Well, I think that's why Senator McCain and Senator Graham and Senator Ayotte have proposed a select committee. Presumably, that would be in public. And I think this is going to go on for quite some time. I think people are kidding themselves if they think this is a flash in the pan. There's just too much involved here, and the administration's passivity before, during, and after the September the 11th attack, and frankly, the passivity that they've displayed once the Petraeus-Broadwell affair was uncovered is just inexplicable. The notion that somehow the president is prohibited from finding out what the FBI is doing. Maybe somebody needs to read the Constitution. You know, the FBI is part of the Department of Justice. They actually work for the president. So there's a lot here in the way the administration has handled this that I think warrants further investigation as well.
How do people who think this is an important topic, or many important topics, how do they convince those who say, well, it's just political? How do they convince them that these things really matter?
The most important point is remembering that with 4 dead Americans on September the 11th, other official Americans, and indeed American private citizens throughout the Middle East, remain at risk. And until we fully understand, as a nation, what happened on September the 11th, we can't possibly take adequate steps or formulate policies to protect Americans who might be at risk. I have never seen this as political. Maybe that's just because I used to work in the State Department and see the risk that our people have all around the world. But the notion that you can passively wait for an internal State Department review board or passively wait for an investigation that the CIA director may be compromised to play out over weeks and months, it just doesn't hold water. These are issues that effective leadership, real management in the executive branch addresses immediately to prevent further tragedies or further loss of classified information.
Plus, time's up. You know, really, I mean, this happened, as you noted, that 4 Americans died and also several people were injured in it as well, is that sort of argument that it's political. Well, the Obama administration was successful in keeping it under wraps in terms of there weren't any hearings between the time that it first became evident on September 11th and Election Day. You know, they got a pass. That didn't, you know, so it didn't infect the election in any way. But now it really is a time to, like, you know, find out what happened. And I'm appalled when people say that it's political now. We're trying. I mean, this is in many ways a murder investigation. 4 dead bodies, and we have some people saying, "Oh, it's politics."
Well, I think it goes beyond that, too. I think now we've got more than 2 months since the attack on the consulate in Benghazi, and no retribution, no retaliation, no visible action by the United States against those who murdered 4 American citizens. Now, maybe there's something the administration has in the works, one of the rare national security secrets they've been able to keep. But the signal in the Middle East and beyond is you can kill Americans with impunity. And that is a lesson, once learned, it's going to cause consequences that reverberate down the years.
Ambassador, thank you, sir.